Oh man, shouts to Choo Choo for dropping me a copy of the Wicked Wind because I know that this is a weapon that's come to the shop the week of recording this video, and it's not something I've covered on my channel, but I was not interested in covering this yesterday, and the reason for that is pretty simple. It's a typical axe. It's another example of why axes need a buff in Fortnite Save the World, because their attack speed is pretty slow, their damage is pretty okay high, but it's not really that exceptional anyway, and the only way that I could possibly make this thing useful was attack speed and then just specking with a Paleoluna setup. But even with that, it's not really going to be much better than like any other sword in the game. Like any other faster swinging melee is going to do better if you're relying on Paleoluna. We actually did a video on the Masamune recently where we broke down how attack speed scales with her, and it is tremendous. I'll link the DPS calculator in the description below so you can use that for yourself, and I'll link the Masamune video which talks about that in much greater detail. The other way that you could use this is totally rocking out, and that's interesting because Dennis Jr., who has not re-released as of recording this, but I'm sure he'll be coming out soon down the line, so please do not spam my comments asking about Dennis Jr. Assuming he comes out soon, I'm going to talk about him here and saying that he does give you totally rocking out upon axe eliminations. He also gives you the team perk for that matter, and that can be useful. That's definitely a nice way to make this thing work, but whether or not the Wicked Wind is the best option for that, I do not know. I do think that it could be a fun way to play if you guys want to try out this weapon, but those are the only two ways that I could think of to make this weapon very useful. Obviously, you want Whiteout Fiona for that crit rating, but with that aside, let's talk about the best perks for this. I'm going to talk about the 6 perk right away because that's kind of a fun topic. It is a medieval weapon, so it has that ability where you can regenerate shield for a bit, which is useless if you have blast in the past, but if you're going to be rolling a totally rockin' out build, then that could be very useful for you. And then the other ones are snare and then hitting an enemy grants armor. I don't think either of those are especially useful, but it can't hurt, you know what I mean? So the perks that I'm going to recommend for this is 100% attack speed. Even if you use double crit damage because you're using totally rockin' out, you're going to want a faster swing speed on this weapon, and I don't really think there's any way to get around that. So my recommendation would be attack speed up here, but double crit damage if you think you can make up for it. And then here's kind of the first option. You can either go damage or heavy attack efficiency, because I'll tell you right now, down here I'm going to recommend damage and then crit damage. We'll talk about that in a second. But the damage perk here is interesting because if you want to use heavy attack efficiency, you could spam that heavy attack a little bit. It's not really anything like the Steam Thrasher. You're not spinning around endlessly. That's not what that does. You're basically spinning around for a little bit and then coming to a very slow stop where you're going to be waiting a second to get back into the action. It's not an incredible ability. It's not great for single target damage, but you'll see that crowd clearing, it's actually pretty okay. It's not phenomenal, but it can be useful. So if you want to give that a perk, that's not bad. Remember in the loadout where I got the gameplay that I'm showing you today, I was using Paleoluna. So since most of my damage is coming from her anyway, you can go a heavy attack efficiency perk and take advantage of that if you want to. But I recommend a damage perk kind of just across the board. But the crit damage down here is because I'm using Whiteout Fiona. The fact that this weapon has a base 25% crit chance is huge. That's very, very high. And with Whiteout Fiona in the support, we're up over a 42% chance to crit. So an extra crit damage perk actually works out to be more useful all around than a damage perk. And that's a pretty cool thing to know. If you don't have Whiteout Fiona and you won't be using her, then you can just go triple damage. No worries there. But I think a crit damage perk is a nice thing to use if you have that option. And I got right to the point because that's pretty much all there is to say. Axes are unfortunately underpowered in this game. The Wicked Wind is kind of useful. I do have a little bit of extra footage for you guys here at the very end. We did try it on the Storm King because a lot of people mentioned that this was a very hard hitting weapon. It just had a bad swing speed, and my experience was mixed. We only got to the horn 3 times because my game froze and I couldn't get you the 4th horn, but from my experience it was doing pretty low damage, critting for an unimpressive amount. But the second time around I was hitting for a lot harder than the other 2 times, and then the war cry stacked on top of that, so I genuinely don't know what was happening. Those first 2 horns were in the exact same fight. I don't know why my damage changed. Maybe somebody can explain this, but assuming the time that I did the most damage is more akin to what you're going to be experiencing yourself, this can be an okay alternative. If you have no other weapon besides a surround pound, Storm King's Fury, the Storm King's Ravager, the Spectral Blade, or a harder hitting hardware weapon like the Smasher Basher, if you have none of those and you want to make this work somehow, you could use the Wicked Wind. But I recommend that very, very carefully because I don't want someone to go and say, oh, B said this was good. No, I'm saying it can work, but there are much better alternatives that will be a lot more effective, like the Fury, for example. If you've beat the Storm King a couple of times, you might have that weapon. It hits harder and swings faster and has better perks and is much more usable in normal missions. You see where I'm going with this? So the Wicked Wind can work on the Storm King's Horn. I'm not going to say it's not a bad option. I'm just saying it's something you might want to tread carefully with. That being said, if you are going to be using it for the Storm King's Horn and for Luna for that matter, you might also want to recommend going Brightcore on this thing because you'll get that faster swing speed, and on the Horn you'll be doing the same amount with Brightcore or Sunbeam. So if you're only using this for the Storm King's Horn for some reason, then Bright Core will actually be the better option there in that specific situation. More often than not, I highly recommend using Sunbeam in general, just because it'll be more effective out in a normal mission. With Luna, that extra swing speed might make a difference. I haven't personally done the math. I would just err on the side of caution and use Sunbeam anyway. Whew, the Wicked Wind ended up being more to talk about than I thought. If you guys want to support the channel, feel free to use code Mista to check out. Subscribe if you're new, become a member if you guys want to support me even further, get some awesome rewards. You can see them there. Hope you guys enjoyed, and have a nice day. And then